I'm Nina Marie Petitpas, listening to the Movie Raid.
It's time for the movie raid, and tonight's victim is actress Nina Marie Petitpas, is currently playing in Park Dead: The Awakening, as well as Neutropia. Hello.
Hello.
So what can you tell us about the new Park Dead that's going on? Who's directing it, and is this a feature film and so forth?
This is a feature film, and it's mostly about two sisters in conflict with each other. It's a horror.
All horror. How long has this been going on? Is that almost wrapped up, or is it just started within a couple months?
I believe it has just started.
Having to work within the horror era, is it much more of a different feel to you compared to the fantasy type of roles that you've had in terms of attitude, in terms of the way you work?
Yes, horror films is more of a mystery type, in my opinion. Fantasy is like an adventure, full of excitement. So is horror films, though. But fantasy is more cheery, while horror films are more dark and gloomy.
Now, having to go between both genres, I understand that fantasy is full of fun, but horror is, in a way, can bring a lot of drama out of yourself, and especially at your age. How does this affect? How far do you think you can take it, especially at your age, in terms of acting these type of roles in horror?
In horror, it doesn't affect me like in a bad way. I honestly think that if I was when I'm in a horror film, the only thing I can't do so much blood, and I don't like so much blood in films I'm in. In fantasy, there's not a lot of blood and gore, stuff. So it's a little different.
You have your own restrictions in terms of what you would like to do in between genres, or you are easygoing, like you can accept pretty much anything, even though you're not particularly partake of blood?
Well, I can accept anything, like from fantasy, horror, drama, comedy, a lot of different things. I can try almost anything. I believe if I put my mind to it, I will be able to do anything.
It's great practice between both genres, because they're both completely different worlds, both completely different set of acting skills, and there's so many broad things to do with these characters, and it's just endless, to be honest. You never know where to really start, where to end, and how the outcome is ever going to be. Now, when it comes to characters, can put a large effect on the audience, and do you think you control a majority of that effect, or do you think the character pretty much takes over for the most part, but you of course have your own part as well?
I believe that I do affect the feel in the audience, because when you're being that character, it makes people who is watching it feel the same emotion.
And how do you feel when you get that kind of emotion? Do you want to go bigger with it, or do you go to a specific type of limit with that character so you can, so to speak, sell to the crowd?
I try to go as big as I can, because when I'm reading a script, I do feel what that character is feeling. Like in Neutropia, when my sister died, I felt that.
That kind of good positive attitude when working with these type of characters, and as well as bouncing off on other characters, how does it work with you in terms of the horror? Is this still new, even though you have some experience as well with it?
Yes, it's always you always experience something else. There's always more to experience. Because sometimes it could be different types of horror films, from murder to kidnap and all those other things.
And how do people see you at performing these types of very dark roles in terms with the horror genre, having to continue to perceive this, having to go out there at your age? Do they pretty much approve to you, or do you try to actually prove it to them? Go from one character to another in horror?
When people see me in horror, I feel like they might prefer me to be in fantasy. I love horror, and I read a lot of books on it. Not so much gory, but when people see me in those, I feel like they think that I might be good as a part of the character. In fantasy, I think that people would accept me more.
And how does that make you actually feel toward that, having to step away from that environment that you're used to and having to step into this, even though it's a whole new world, a whole new experience, but having to actually feel the types of characters and the new experience? How does that affect you between what you've already been used to already?
Well, it feels great because I get to be different characters and I get to feel different feelings. It's super fun, doing different things.
Oh, without a doubt. There's always different characters and always different ways how to perform the character, and it is always fun. And having to perform in different genres, it can be very difficult at the same time. What's the most difficult at the moment? Is this the most difficult genre for you?
Sort of is, because when you're transitioning from two different genres to another, like from a different genre to another, it's sort of difficult, but not too much. Because you're one character and then you go to another, then it's jumping back and forth practically, but it's still really fun and easy. And at the same time, it's difficult.
Oh, definitely, yeah, because you're stepping into a whole new suit, so to speak, and having to maneuver different ways of how this character is going to work, and having been used to another genre, I can see all the challenges that it's a whole new set of challenges you got to jump over just to make one point after the other for that character. There's always a lot of ugliness in characters.
Yeah.
And there's some beauty in some characters. Do you think you can bring that beauty out of an ugly character, even though that character is really set to be ugly?
Yes, it depends on if the character is supposed to be, like, it depends. Because I do like to bring the beauty out in ugly characters. It just depends on if the character is supposed to be like that.
Oh, definitely. And it can be hard, too, because having to, being used to, like I said, being used to one genre and having to take out all that niceness and all that beauty and certain characters, all that fantasy journey type of feel to it. And then you have a really dark, ugly characters to work with, and having to adjust yourself to that. Does that make it a little bit more difficult for you to do that?
Yeah.
Which part of it is it actually more hard to adjust to? Is it the character itself, or is it having to prepare for a dark character like that?
Mostly the character itself.
Definitely always a challenge, and always something to look forward to. It's always never really not fun to do, but having to get that out there, especially in independent film. Do you like independent better, or would you eventually want to go for more major studios and more outgoing types of studios out there?
I would like to go to more outgoing studios.
Do you think this is really better practice for you, or do you think this is really helping your career out as a starter, or would you prefer it actually in a major studio and then moving on to these types of films?
I think I would like to start in an outrageous studio. I do want to do more films because I love it. It's so fun. I really want to do more films, and I love acting. It's my favorite thing. When I grow up, I really want to be an actor, so I really want to be in more films. I also really want to be in Star Wars. Not really 12, but might be a big goal, but I really want to do it.
Hey, one day, man, they're already making like 30 sequels already. You'll be in one eventually. That's the thing. Always reach out your goal, and you always will reach out to whatever type of film that you'd love to go as well, as long as people will recognize what you have done and what you're doing right now.
I do fantasy. I love fantasy, and I love everything else too. But fantasy is the thing I mostly like to do. I love adventures, like adventures with a team and family, and the characters' friends and family, of course. And it's really fun.
How do you feel if others, like studios or other colleagues that you work with, how do you feel if they were trying to convince you to not just work in fantasy? Are you okay with that, or do you want to just specifically be in fantasy and make yourself a career with that only for the most part?
I would definitely like to be a part of be in different genres as well as fantasy. But I want to stay in fantasy more, but as well as other genres.
And it's okay to agree to that, though. It's not really a bad thing, because if this is something you feel comfortable with, for the most part, I mean, there's nothing wrong with stepping out of your bounds either, because you can extend further of how much of a character actor that you can actually get out there.
I do like to step out of my bounds, but there is limits.
What limits do you expect to have, or actually what's going to be given to you due to your age, or is it because of your age?
Well, yes, it's mostly because of my age, because I don't want to be in, rated R things, stuff that shows bad things like drugs and nudeness. I don't like that kind of stuff.
Do you actually think that other actors at the same age as you is more of offensive and actually something not so good in film right now, or do you think it's just something that you have to, in some cases, have to be a part of no matter what, but you can still fight it?
Mind if other people do this stuff that's rated R and all that stuff, I would like them to do what they like to do. And I want to do what I like to do too. I, of course, encourage everybody to do what they want to.
But things, people kind of get offended by that, especially with these types of younger audiences and younger actors performing in these types of characters, and people are kind of rebelling against these type of films, and they're not actually being open to that. How do you feel the fact that when you're performing a dark character like this, do you think parents are going to be calling everybody else up, their kids, and trying to set an example, or do you like to set some kind of an example yourself?
I would like to set an example. I want to send a good message to all kids. I want to set a good example, and I would not forgive myself if I set a really bad example for kids.
How do you feel that about today's movies? Do you think they're not setting a good example, or do you think they're just not trying to put an example out there?
I don't really mind other people what they do. In kid stuff, if there's something not so kid-friendly, I don't really criticize it. But, I don't think that they should put bad stuff in kids' shows or movies, but most movies are good. Most movies are kid-friendly, so I believe that is really good.
Oh yeah, there's always a bound to to an extent that it's not always good, but sometimes you got to make a buck. But as long as it's not too bad to the point where you will end up having to call your parents and so forth, and they're not going to be happy about it either.
I did have to turn down one call. I'm not going to say names, but I did decline one thing, and I read the script through, and I didn't really like it because it wasn't so kid-friendly. I didn't audition for it, so I didn't feel comfortable with the role.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that, though. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't take every role, but at the same time, if you really, truly don't feel comfortable with it, that you think it's not going to be how you feel on both sides, then yeah, you shouldn't take that role. But there's always a bigger opportunity out there. It's just the right time.
Yeah.
But go ahead and plug in any websites or anything that we can check out right now.
IMDb. Do you believe that Nootropia's trailer's on either YouTube? Yeah, YouTube. Yeah, I remember. It's on YouTube. I think if you just put in Nootropia, but you have to go onto the SNI Universe page, you'll find the trailer.
Well, very nice. And that is Nina Marie Petitpas.